Hello there guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews. This one is kind of late to the game, I have to admit, but it's still quite an important one because we've all heard about the imminent invasion done by electric or petrol-powered cars from China on the European market. Now, that didn't really happen up until now. The Chinese car manufacturers did try to come into Europe with their own offerings, but up until now, their cars didn't really pass the vibe check of European customers. Things are starting to change though, and they are starting to change with the introduction of new brands that are doing things rather differently. And one of them is definitely Lynk Co. And that's because this brand, even though it might sound a bit weird, it's actually a Volvo underneath it all. Lynk Co is one of the many brands owned by the Geely Corporation, and Geely definitely has its tentacles in a lot of brands. The best move they made was buy Volvo a while back, and they didn't really impede on the way the Swedish car brand used to make things. They just let them do their thing and then just grabbed the technology the engineers in Göteborg developed. And they started to create their own brands. So Geely right now has the Zeekr brand, the Lynk Co, their own cars, Geely cars. They also own Lotus, they also own Smart, and they also own Volvo, among a number of other brands. There are some others that I didn't really mention because they're not exactly relevant. So this is basically a Volvo XC40, and today we're going to take a closer look at what it brings to the table. If you're living in Western Europe, you probably have already seen a number of these cars on the roads, and they are expanding to more and more countries, including Romania, where I'm filming this from. Initially, to gain some buzz and some market appeal, Lynk Co offered the 01 model as a sort of lease deal. You would be able to pay 500 euros a month for one of these cars, and that was it. You didn't have to pay for insurance, for tires, for anything else but the gas and the electricity you put in it. And it was a great deal. In case it broke down, they gave you another car and so on. So a lot of people actually did that, and they actually used these cars for ride-sharing services, for taxis, and so on. And they actually proved to be quite reliable because underneath it all, as I said, this is a Volvo. And Volvo created a platform that's very modular and allowed Lynk Co to use it as well. From the outside, you would be definitely hard-pressed to tell that this is Volvo because the design of the thing is definitely very far off from something Volvo would offer. However, just like the XC40, it was developed in Sweden, both in terms of design and in terms of technology. Only this car is made in China, whereas the XC40 is made in Belgium. In terms of size, well, this is a C segment crossover, so you will have a total length of 4.54 meters, which is more than what the XC40 is offering. The wheelbase is also a bit longer at 2.72 meters, so quite a big difference compared to the XC40, and we're going to notice that once we get inside the car because we have some extra room. In terms of design, well, it may be a bit peculiar. I'm not really sold on the exterior design for now, but what I did notice is that a lot of people are turning their heads to watch this car go by. My guess is that this is happening around here because you don't really see many of these cars on public roads in Romania. This is probably one of the first cars registered over here, so yes, a lot of people will be curious to learn about it. But up front we do have a split headlight design. So basically this over here is the daytime running light element with the turn signal included as well, and this is actually the headlamp with the low beam and the high beam. And when you're sitting behind the wheel, you can actually notice these elements on the sides of the car rather easily, and they do give you a very good idea as to where the edges of the car are, so you don't really run into something or damage the car. Also up front we have a huge grille up front with these blue highlights and the Lynk Co badge over there. So overall I think it looks rather interesting. Another thing you should know is the fact that over here in Europe this car only comes in one equipment line. So the top one, of course, you can only buy this car as a fully spec'd one. The only thing you can actually choose is the exterior paint color. So you can choose from between blue and black. We have the black version over here with blue accents all around, including on the 20-inch wheels, which, by the way, are the only measurement you can get on this car. Over here on the left side, we also have the charging port, which is magnetically sealed. Quite nice, actually. The other side doesn't have a charging port, and the maximum charging power is 6.6 kilowatts, in case you were wondering. Now, around the back, we also have a 3D design for the tail lamps. They actually look really good and different, and we also have a huge Lynk Co badge over here, and I actually like the sloping roofline as well. And one interesting detail I noticed was the shark fin at the top of the car, which to me it seems like it was fixed the wrong way around. I think it was supposed to be the other way around, but maybe that's just me. And since this is a black model, you get these silver roof liners, roof hooks, and on the blue one you can get them in black if that matters to you. Now let's hop inside and check out what that has in store for us. Let's start the interior side of the thing, of the review, with the trunk, because this is a plug-in hybrid model, as I already mentioned, and that means we have 466 liters of space under the inside the boot, whereas the non-plug-in hybrid version would have 507 liters of space. But I think this is quite enough. Plenty of room under here as well, plenty of anchor points and storage points. It's lit up. We have a 12-volt socket over here, so it's quite a good place to store your items. 60/40 split rear bench, which is not exactly great, but we do have an electrically operated rear window. So let's talk about the interior. The door cards are wrapped in good quality materials. So this is soft touch plastic, and it does remind me of the Volvo one. Even the texture seems the same, and it's a good quality plastic used over here. We have synthetic leather over here and over here. I actually like this blue stitching, and the materials feel rather nice to the touch. Even the plastic feels okay, except maybe this area, but then again, you don't really care about that. The rear seats and the front seats, the upholstery in this car is just textile. You cannot get leather seats on this car, which is a shame, but the Lynk Co representative said that this is a conscious choice, because this is an eco-friendly car, so they wanted to have as low as an impact as possible. And these seats are the upholstery of this car is done in recycled nylon, so you know, it gets rid of the nylon we see in the seats these days. And I actually like this blue highlight of the top part of the seat. So yeah, quite okay in my book, even though this is not leather. Let's check the room. So the access is really easy, and there's plenty of room. I'm 6 feet tall, and this is the driver's seat adjusted in my comfortable driving position. I have plenty of knee room, and I actually like the plastic used on the backs of these seats. I like this detail over here, it looks really good. And we have some storage space over here. So yeah, not bad at all. Let's check the headroom. As I said, 6 feet tall, and I actually fit in here quite easily. We do have this panoramic sunroof over here, which comes as standard, and it does open, unlike on the BMW X3, for example. This is a rather high transmission tunnel. We have two USB charging ports over here, a Type-C and a Type-A, but no control for the rear passengers in terms of temperature. So we only have a 2-zone climate control, but that's okay. And that's the dashboard of the Lynk Co 01. As I said, this car uses the Volvo XC40 platform, but there are very few items inside that remind you of it, unlike what's happening on other brands that are using the same platform. So very few elements up front will remind you that this is a Volvo underneath it all. So we're going to talk about those, and you'll notice yourself that there aren't too many. Now let's talk about the quality on the front door card, very good as it was in the back, no complaints whatsoever. This area over here actually feels very nice. Once again, the BMW X3 could use a thing or two in terms of the materials used inside this car. And these are the front seats with the headrests integrated into the backrest. That's not ideal in my book because taller people such as myself will have their head somewhere above the headrest, but it does look nice. Now the front, the driver's seat is adjustable electrically in 8 different directions, whereas the passenger seat has 6-way adjustable settings, but only manually. Let's hop inside, take a look at what the Lynk Co 01 has to offer us. So, synthetic leather on the steering wheel, synthetic leather on the dash, synthetic leather over there. So, plenty of synthetic leather, but it actually feels really nice to the touch. The plastics feel good to the touch. Even these over here actually feel great to the touch. Now, this allows you to control the adaptive cruise control and highway assistant, and these buttons over here allow you to control that gauge over there. So depending on which you actually select, the functionality of these buttons changes. For example, if you're in the multimedia section, you can actually change the tune, play, pause, and so on. But if you're in like the trip computer, you can change between the trip computers. This is the instrument cluster. It actually looks pretty good. Let's start the car. And you can choose between 4 different themes for it. I prefer this classic one, to be honest, and it actually looks and works pretty good. Not a lot to complain about, honestly. This is the multimedia system, quite a big screen, and it actually works really nicely. Plenty of menus to choose from. I think the only area where I saw some lag is the navigation system. It could work better, to be honest, but you know what, it's okay. You will be using Android Auto or Apple CarPlay anyway, both of them wirelessly connected to this system, so you won't have any issues with that. There are some interesting things you can talk about in this area, in the multimedia system. For example, this shortcut, it's actually pretty nice, but also the fact that you have a car sharing possibility. Well, you used to, as I said, this car was available for car sharing services, and this collab area where you can actually send your ideas for improving the car to those at Lynk & Co. Quite interesting. We also have a journey camera. Basically, the car has 2 cameras, one for in front of you. Let me just show you. One camera that films the road ahead and one for selfies. Hi, this is the camera over here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's over here, right? So you can take pictures, you can film yourself. I don't know who does that. This doesn't work when you're on the move, but it's a trend in the automotive business these days. We also have the Infinity sound system over here, which is actually pretty darn good, and overall the build quality is impressive. Over here you have the button for the temperature setting, and this is the button for the AC in terms of vent power, right? So you can adjust the vent speed using that button. This center console actually looks pretty good. We have another item. So I was talking about the items that are resembling the ones used in a Volvo car. This is one, right? So this is one as well, and the gear shift lever, which does resemble the one used in the XC40, but it's not exactly identical, but it does work identical. For example, unlike on most cars, whereas let's say you put the car in reverse, right, and you want to go into drive, which is the 3rd position down, right? On most cars, if you hold the stick down, it will go into drive, but not on Volvo cars. You have to go through every gear. Also, the camera system is pretty good, and you can actually get a 3D view of the car if you wanted to, right? And it works pretty nice. And when you turn your signal on, the car actually turns on the cameras on that side of the car, or left or right, whatever you're signaling, and it actually shows you your blind spots, and it's actually pretty nice. So yeah, this is where you choose the driving modes. You have pure, when you're only using electric power, hybrid, and power, where you use both engines when you're driving, both motors. Pretty good. I am actually impressed. So as I was saying, check out the blind spot monitoring, right? So I can see on the screen what's happening around me, but the problem is this only works at low speeds. At higher speeds, I think it's a safety feature that it doesn't work because it might distract your attention from the road, and I agree with that. Let's talk about the technical side of things. As I already mentioned a couple of times already, this is built on the same platform as the Volvo XC40. It's a modular platform from Volvo. A lot of cars are actually built on it, not just the XC40, but I'm talking about the XC40 because it's the exact same segment, but this car is just a bit bigger and better in a number of ways. So just like the T5 version of the Volvo XC40, the plug-in hybrid, we have a 1.5 liter 3-cylinder turbocharged engine under the hood. That's good for 180 horsepower and 265 Newton meters of torque. And then we have an electric motor also under the hood. That's good for 82 horsepower and 160 Newton meters of torque. So together they deliver 262 horsepower, up to 262 horsepower, and let's say 425 Newton meters of torque. That power is sent to the front wheels alone through an automatic 7-speed dual clutch gearbox that was developed by Geely together with Volvo, and according to Geely, that gearbox should be good for about 340,000 kilometers if you service it regularly. And that's about 100,000 kilometers more than the equivalent DSG gearbox from the Volkswagen Group. So those are some pretty big claims. We're gonna have to wait and see if they deliver on that reliability front. But when it comes to driving the car, I can actually say that this 7-speed dual clutch is doing its job rather nicely. Now the electric motor is included in the gearbox, and it uses the 2, 4, and 6 speeds, as well as the reverse speed. It handles them, so it's hooked up to those speeds. When you're driving the car, it's actually very smooth. No matter if you're driving it in electric mode or in hybrid mode or in power mode, the car actually delivers great performance, and it's quite fluid all around. As for the engine itself, well, even though it's a 3-cylinder, it's not that unbalanced. It actually feels quite refined, and I noticed that about 1.5 liter 3-cylinder motors, it's quite interesting how they all feel kind of the same. I'm talking about this one, I'm talking about the B38 from BMW. They feel quite refined. You don't feel all those nasty vibrations the 1 liter or 1.2 liter engines have. So it's quite okay. Even the sound of the engine is quite okay, even though you don't really hear it all that much. You only hear it when you're really stepping on the gas. And even then, it's not that bothering. It's not bothering me that much, to be honest. Now, what I don't like about driving this car is the brake pedal feel. Like a lot of other cars that are hybridized to some extent, you have a certain step in the brake pedal travel on this car, because at first when you start pressing on the brake pedal, you start braking with the regenerative brakes in order to feed energy back into that 17.6 kilowatt hour battery located in the back with a 14.4 usable capacity. So you start braking, and you're braking with the regenerative part of the system, and then there's a threshold where you step from regenerative braking to actual mechanical braking with the brake pads on the rotors. That's a noticeable step, and the pedal travel isn't consistent throughout. So when you're using the regenerative braking, the pedal feel is a lot softer. When you start braking mechanically, it's a lot steeper. So you'll end up in a number of situations where you're gonna feel that transition inside the car. So it's not exactly nice, but it's not a huge deal either. I've seen cars with worse implementation of this system. So it's, let's say, around an 8 out of 10. Also, the steering doesn't really have any feedback, but that's okay. This is not a sports car. Most people will be looking for this in their car because this will be used primarily around town. So you want a rather easy to operate steering. The turning radius is, the turning diameter of this car is 11.3 meters, which is quite okay for this segment. So parking it will be rather easy. It's not a huge car. It won't be a problem to navigate busy city streets with it. It's quite compact. It's quite okay from that point of view. And the camera system will actually allow you to see everything around you rather clear on this huge screen, so no issues whatsoever in that department either. The suspension is quite a highlight of this car. Now, I did test drive the Volvo XC40 plug-in hybrid, the sister car to this one, about 2 years ago, and that felt a lot stiffer than this one. Mind you, we're talking about a McPherson setup up front and a multi-link setup in the back. The same was the case with the XC40, and we are riding on 20-inch wheels, which is the only option you can get on a Lynk Co 01. So rather big wheels overall. But even so, the car actually feels quite comfortable. It feels more comfortable than the Volvo in my book, and I think that might have something to do with the longer wheelbase and heavier mass this car has to carry around. Speaking of which, since this car has almost twice the battery size of the Volvo, it is also heavier at 2.35 tons. So it's also slower because it will do 100 kilometers an hour from standstill in 8 seconds, whereas the Volvo would do it in 7.3. So mind you, that's a big difference as well. However, this car will do 210 kilometers an hour top speed, whereas the Volvo tops out at 180 because it is electronically limited to that top speed as Volvo promised. So a couple of differences between them, but the suspension overall is very comfortable, and also the sound insulation is pretty good. I do have a problem with it on this car, but I think it's down to the tires. There's a specific tire noise that gets very, very obvious inside the cabin at 100 kilometers and more. So over 100 kilometers an hour, the noise levels inside the car are quite high. But I blame it on the tires. I think there's an issue with the tires, not the car itself. Even if it was an issue with the car, the brilliant Infinity sound system would take care of that, I think, on longer trips. So overall, a great experience. But I think you will quite be curious about the fuel efficiency or the electric range this car has. So Lynk Co says that the 01 should do about 69 kilometers of range at the minimum with a full battery. Well, I managed to get about 45 to 50 kilometers of range with this car in a very busy city like Bucharest and in cold weather. So I think you will probably get closer to 50, maybe even 60 on better weather and in a different traffic. I had an average speed of about 20 kilometers an hour when I did my real life range test. For most people, if you're gonna recharge this car every day, as you should recharge a plug-in hybrid every day, I think that's going to be enough. With the battery completely depleted, I saw an average fuel consumption around town of about 4.9 liters per 100 kilometers covered, which is pretty good for a car this size with this much power. On the series of B roads at an average of about 70 kilometers an hour, the fuel consumption was 5.8, and on the highway that went up to 8.7. So quite thirsty on the highway, But that's the case with most plug-in hybrids. You have to rely on the 3-cylinder under the hood solely on the highway. So yes, fuel consumption will go up quite noticeably. I think it could have been better, but overall I think it's okay. And most people will be okay with that. The fuel tank has about 44 liters or 42 liters, I don't really remember right now. So we should get about 400 kilometers of range even on the highway. Mind you, I kept it at 130, and I know in some countries the speed limit is 120. So I think the fuel consumption will be closer to 8 or even under 8 liters per 100 kilometers covered. So overall, pretty good results. I actually enjoyed the car. I think it's a very good mix of build quality, a good mix of materials. I have to say it again, the BMW X3 could actually learn something from the Lynk Co 01 in terms of materials used inside. And I think given the right price, this could be a very good rival for the cars in its segment. But let's talk about those. Which cars are to be threatened by the Lynk Co 01? Well, we're talking about premium cars in the compact segment, premium compact SUVs, if you will. So we're gonna mention the BMW X1 plug-in hybrid, the Volvo XC40 plug-in hybrid, the Mercedes-Benz GLA plug-in hybrid. Those are the cars this one goes up against. Even the Lexus UX to some extent could be a rival for this car. In terms of pricing, well, it will depend on the market you're in, but over here in Romania, this is about 8,000 euros at least cheaper than the Volvo XC40. And the Volvo XC40 doesn't have the specs this car has, especially when we're talking about space inside and about the battery size. Of course, the XC40 still had leather in its configurator, so that could be an issue for those who actually want leather inside their car. But other cars, for example, the BMW X1 starts over here at about 48,000 euros if we're talking about the plug-in hybrid 25e version. But that's the starting price. This car costs 47,000 euros with every bell and whistle on it, right? So the X1 starts at 48. If you want to compare it to this one, and you have to add a lot of optional features, and I did that, and then I arrived at a 60,000 euro price tag. So yeah, about 12,000, 13,000 euros difference. The Mercedes-Benz GLA, I tested the GLA 250e a while back with similar specs to this one. It had a price tag of 64,000 euros, so even more expensive. So yeah, compared to even the Alfa Romeo Tonale could be considered a rival for this car in plug-in hybrid guys. So the Tonale is about 48,000 euros starting, right? So quite a big price hike between them. Of course, Lynk Co doesn't have the brand awareness it needs to compare itself to these premium brands, because at the end of the day, when you're buying a premium brand, you're buying the brand first and foremost, and then the performance and the specs of the cars, right? So for a lot of people, this will be an unknown brand, so there's an uphill struggle to make it more popular, to show the people what it's capable of. If the people from Lynk Co will be able to deliver in making this car a lot more popular and to show the world what it brings to the table, I think this could be a sales success, considering it's a lot cheaper than most of the alternatives. But in order for that to happen, this brand and this car has to be promoted quite a lot. People have to touch it, have to drive it, have to get to know it before they actually get interested in it, right? So I think the success of the brand will depend on the marketing team at the end of the day, because the product is good. The product is there. 5 stars in the Euro NCAP testing cycle, and it has a 91% protection rating for adult passengers, which is best in class, I'm willing to bet. So it does have everything it needs to compete in the segment, but in order for it to be conceived as a premium brand, I mean, look at it this way. The Genesis brand has been struggling to compete with Mercedes, BMW for quite some time now, and it still isn't there. Even though it's a brilliant car, people willing to pay that kind of money for a premium experience will most likely be going to a premium brand with a reputation behind it because of what it stands for, what it means. It's quite hard to explain to someone you have a Lynk Co 01. They're gonna say, what is that? Well, it's a Volvo XC40 but with a different badge, and it's a lot cheaper. You don't have to go through that when you have a already established brand. So this will be a very uphill battle for Lynk Co, but I think they can do it. If there's anyone who can do it, I think Geely as a conglomerate has already done it, and they can do it again. Now, that said, this has been my review of the Lynk Co 01. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about it. If you have one, if you had any issues with it, let me know what it was. If you bought one through that €500 lease program, tell me what your experience was. And let me know what you think about Lynk Co in general. Until next time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to feed your passions. Ciao.